The starting point of my talk today is a simple fact. If the text of the Bible and the accompanying commentary are copied in a manuscript in a single text block, then the scribe, by necessity, must have done the copying all at once, at one go. As an example, I show you this 10th century manuscript from Munich. Of course, the difference in handwriting is the result of the desire to distinguish the biblical text written in majuscule characters from the commentary written in minuscule ones, but it is all the work of a single scribe. If, on the other hand, as we have in the case of those so-called frame or marginal commentary manuscripts, the biblical text sits in the center of the page, and the commentary surrounds it on 2 or 3 sides in the margins, then copying would have been done, again by necessity, at 2 stages. First, the biblical text, we must assume, and only after that, the commentary that accompanies, that frames it. In those cases, when one looks carefully at the manuscript, one can sometimes distinguish different stages in the scribe's work when adding the commentary to the biblical text. I have deliberately chosen, as my 3 examples today, manuscripts on which other colleagues have worked. And I hope there will be some discussion and others will add observations or perhaps corrections to what I'm going to say. This is a manuscript which Panayotis on the first day of our conference showed under its old shelf mark. It was relatively recently repatriated to Greece. The main part of the book, which contains almost the entire New Testament, is a work of the second half of the 9th century. However, the scribe must have intended to add commentary to the biblical text, but very little of that commentary was actually written by him. If you look carefully at the height line, do I have a pointer? Yeah. So the name, the Lima Theodorico, the author of a passage, of a commentary passage, is written in the same hand as the main biblical text. However, the actual commentary in the surrounding margins is written, that should be obvious to all of you with your experience with manuscripts, is written in a different hand. Not only different, but a much later hand, which is datable to the first half of the 12th century. So for 300 years, the book remained with hardly any commentary in the margins, and only much later, much after it had been initially copied, was the actual commentary added. The original scribe certainly intended to have commentary, but for some reason, that must remain unknown to us, did not actually carry through his work to the end. In a few cases, not only the names of the commentators, but also short commentary passages have been added. Here we have again Theodorico, and Tudeskin is the beginning of a passage that ends here. This is also the work of the original scribe. And there's another passage by Severianus, which is again a work of the late 9th century. But these are isolated instances. By far, most of the commentary, which is very extensive, was added in the first half of the 12th century, as I mentioned. Right, now when we look at these 12th century editions, on some occasions, we can see that the 12th century scribe, if you look at the passage, this is the 12th century passage that starts here, and then here. This is written certainly in the same hand, in the same 12th century hand that I added the rest of the commentaries, but if you look carefully, you see that the ink is darker and the handwriting is slightly denser than elsewhere in the margin. This means, to my mind, this can only mean one thing. The scribe wrote most of the commentary on the page at one go, then came back after a while and added this particular passage in a different ink, so at a different point in time. Now there are 2 possible explanations for that. Either he omitted a passage from the exemplar, skipped a passage from the exemplar that he was using, and then came back, corrected his work, and added the missing text, or he used another source for that particular passage, which is added here in darker ink. The second of these explanations seems to be the much likelier, because had the scribe skipped the passage initially, he would not have left empty space on the page. I mean, parchment is expensive, so one tries to make best use of it. And notice how densely the commentary here fills the margins of the page. So the fact that there was empty space left here shows that the scribe anticipated that there would be something coming in, but did not initially have the source for that particular commentary passage, and only later on added it when that source became available. Right. One should also add that the commentary that we find in Gregory Ireland 1424 has no exact counterpart in any other commentary manuscript. So this is not an entirely unique, but an unusual manuscript in terms of the commentary that it contains. This also makes it unlikely that this is a copy of an already existing text, commentary text. In other words, we can see here the commentary, if we look carefully at the handwriting in the margins, in the process of being put together, or rather in the process of being supplemented with extra material. Yet another example from the same manuscript. On one occasion, we got another hand, not that of the scribe who added most of the commentary, that added a passage which is attributed to John Chrysostom, the abbreviation of that. Right. And if I'm not mistaken in my judgment, and how could I be? This is also a hand of the first half of the 12th century, so roughly coeval with that of the main commentary scribe, but it is a different hand. And again, that particular Chrysostomian passage must have come from a different source. Right. So we see how the commentary is gradually accumulated into the margins of the manuscript here. This has all been digitized by the Center for the Study of New Testament Manuscripts. Right. My second example is a copy of the Pauline Epistles in Paris. Jacopo knows this manuscript very well. Now, in this case, the principal biblical text and most of the commentary, if you look at the commentary that begins with number 1 here, are copied in a single hand, which my friend Alessia Aletta identified some time ago with the hand of one Stephen, who in the year 888, our year 888, copied and signed a famous manuscript of Euclid's Elements, so nothing to do with the Bible, which is now in the Bodleian Library in Oxford. Right. Even if the hand is not that even, it is very similar in the hand of the Parisian manuscript. And this implies with certainty a very close date. To my mind, the Parisian manuscript must be a bit later than the Oxford one, because the style of ornamentation here, with these hollow capital letters filled with gold, does not occur in 9th century manuscripts. So this must be a work of the 10th century, but of the very first decades of the 10th century, so shortly after the year 900. Right. But not all of the commentary in the Parisian manuscript was copied by Stephen, or by somebody who wrote a very similar. We have got another layer of commentary, which, if you observe carefully, is linked to the biblical text not with numbers, numbers 2 and 3 here, but with conventional kind, this time here. And we also have short glosses. These passages here, which are written in majuscule characters, right? And these are first written in a lighter, slightly lighter ink, and second, I hope that you will agree with me, certainly not the work of the same person for the text and commentary here, for the main part of it. Right? So these are added by a different scribe. When I was cataloging this manuscript for the Catena project, I was very eager to see these scribes as collaborators. So I was trying to push the date of this one mentally, of course, earlier in time. But the truth is that this kind of handwriting, which is similar to the handwriting of the scribe Ephraim, whom we just heard about in the morning today, is not conceivable before the mid-10th century. So it must be a few decades later than the original part of the book. Right. In other words, here is another example of these editions. And here the difference in ink is very noticeable. See how much darker the ink of the older commentaries. In other words, we have got one scribe copying biblical text with some commentary, and then another one coming a few decades later and adding extra commentary. The trouble in this case is that the extra commentary added by anonymous scribe 2, the one whose work we see here, is not attested to my knowledge in another manuscript of the commentary manuscript of the Pauline Epistles. So the principal text is of the catena type C175. And the text that begins here with Turum Mertoculi, this refers to these are the Catholic epistles, so to the epistle of Thales. This I have not found in another manuscript. So somebody added commentary from an unknown source at some point in the mid-10th century. The case deserves further study in terms of trying to establish the source of the extra commentary. With my third and final example, things are a bit clearer. Again, a manuscript that is well known to Jacopo and to others here. This manuscript, again in Paris, contains the Pauline Epistles with the catena commentary in the margins. This is the so-called pseudo-ecumenian catena, which you've heard enough already in the course of this symposium, right? The images are not very good, but again, you can see this is the beginning of the Epistle to Corinthians. Again, you can see that most of the marginal commentary is added by the same hand that copied the main text. The handwriting is datable to the mid-10th century, so closing dates to the second scribe in our previous manuscript. But then as a second frame, as it were, in the margin, extra commentary passages were added. See that these are linked again, not with numbers, alphabeta, but with conventional signs. So here the two reference systems actually show two layers of commentary. Right. And the extra passages here, which are added by a similar, but to my mind, different hand, also at about the same time when the main text was copied, so in the mid-10th century, are all attributed in other manuscripts. Here they are anonymous. They are attributed to Photius, Patriarch of Constantinople. Now, because there was little space in the margins of his authorship is beyond now. Because there was little space in the margins here, some of the comment of the Photian editions that overflowed, as it were added on the very last pages of the book as continuous text. These pages are, of course, quite damaged because these are the leaves that are most exposed when a book loses its title. But with some effort, one can identify the text with the help of the TOG, of course, as again belonging to these Photian glosses on the Pauline Epistles. Now, so in other words, again, we see how the commentary grows. So the pseudo-Cornelian catena is enriched, in this case, with extra additions, which come from an identifiable source, Photius. The question that the study of the manuscript as such cannot answer, this to my knowledge is one of the earliest instances when the Photian scholia appear in a commentary. The question that the study of the manuscript itself cannot answer is whether these are extracts from an extensive, complete commentary written by the Patriarch of Constantinople, or whether actually Photius only wrote short passages which were intended from the very beginning as additions to the pseudo-ecumenian catena. For this, to answer this question, we need to look at the text itself. We need internal study of the text. So, what can paleography do? The basis of paleography is careful observation, which, combined with a good visual memory, can help us to establish the correct date of a manuscript, and on occasion to also identify the person, be it a named or an anonymous one, who copied the text in. What I tried to show also is that on the basis of careful observation again, we can see how catenae are being put together. We can observe them in the process of being assembled. There is no reason to think, and the examples here are eloquent enough, I hope, there is no reason to think that every single manuscript that we have is a copy of a pre-existing lost exemplar. The ones that I showed you certainly weren't, because the catena, we can see the catena grow in them, in front of our eyes. I think this comes to show that the basis of any study of a text should be an examination of the manuscript that contains it. When Peter and I discussed a curious case of two commentaries combined together, the answer to the problem that the two of us encountered was the manuscript itself, at which we looked in the VMR, in the Münster VMR. That was how I wanted to tell. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much indeed. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Georgi, for the paper. As you know, 1424 and 605 have been part of some of our research here at INSEAD. One thing I would say, and maybe you could comment on this, there's actually, on 605, there's actually another hand that I didn't see in your examples, particularly Paul's, very, very tiny.
Unfortunately, I cannot go back to the, Christina, can I go back to the slides, or is it not possible?
But there's a very tiny fine-tipped majuscule text in a red ink, in primarily in Ephesians and Galatians, that corresponds exactly with the first hand in 1424.
Gee, I was not aware of that.
Yeah, and so my thought is, do you think that these are just running marginal commentary that were circulating at the time that got added to the
See, Clark, I'm not sure.
I don't know if you have an example of it or not in your slides.
This is 1424.
Yeah, so what you find is, right.
So, and this corresponds exactly to?
It's not that, it's the marginal scholia at 1424 that's in the first hand.
Yeah.
Okay. There is the exact same commentary in another hand at 605. But it's a very fine tipped red ink. It's hard to see how you zoom in. It's not on every page either.
I hate to disagree with you, but this is not possible.
I can show you pictures, but my point was simply to ask if you think that
because the hand in 1424 is earlier, certainly earlier than the principal hand in 605.
It might be it might be added the first hand, so this is different than the other hands in the margins.
Right, but this is an early 10th century manuscript that runs from the 9th century. So not that the same scribe could not be active in the God of February.
No, I don't think the same scribe. What I mean is they had the same content. Exactly.
They have the same content.
Yes.
I see. Yes.
Yes. So my point was simply that because they actually make up what we call CE2 in the Pauline Epistles, this is the corpus extravaganza of second layer. Does it seem likely that these were just circulating individual commentary and like extracts that eventually got inserted into catena?
The trouble I had with 1424 is that clearly more was supposed to go in there. So this is an unfinished commentary. So how do you classify it if you only have like the beginning of a text that ought to be copied?
It almost seems like to me in this original book that people like Gabriel's manuscript with 655, is that what it is? Where it just had a few marginal extracts but nothing else.
But this is only the same kind, the one in your Berlin. Just one scribe did it.
So yeah, I was just curious your thoughts on it because it seems like there was at least a few examples of manuscripts that are Catenae, but they have sort of spot comments on the text that have been circulating, and then that gets pulled into Catena tradition.
Well, we should have got like empty space left in the margin. I mean, it's tempting to fill it in. And this is what we happened here. So one unknown copy of the manuscript found something interesting, relevant to the biblical text, he copied some extra. Unfortunately, Chrysostom is such a common author that we can't really speculate about the direct source of that.
May I come in on this when you say it's tempting to fill a margin if it's there? Well, with your first example, it looks like to me that was never intended to be filled in, and so you had to, really work hard to get it in. And it reminded me of my professor of Greek language in secondary school that only a barbarian would ever write into a book, and so it's an act of vandalism. And I wonder, is there any perception that this is an act of vandalism? And on the other hand, what's the purpose to squeeze it in? Is it because somebody wanted to study it, have it all on one page?
Certainly not an act of vandalism. Also, the margins here are unusually wide, you see. So there would be no reason to leave so much parchment unused, unless one intended to add commentaries from the very moment the book was planned. Right. So, and then something happened, and most of the commentary did not come in. So 200-300 years elapsed. Somebody else fills in the missing the gap.
But you
Adds the
would
missing
say,
commentary.
even with the large margin, that don't you see this in other manuscripts? They were not supposed to be filled in. It's just that there are margins more generous than usually students when they start to study things. Do you think it was really planned to be done?
I'm certain that it was planned to be done.
Okay.
Especially since the name of Theodoretus was added here.
Okay.
By the way, one of my professors told us that you should not write in books, my dear students, but there is one exception. If you find a typo, you're supposed to write it. So think of this as improving the disfiguring.
Any other questions online or in the room? Yeah.
I have a question about the GA 1424. So you said that there is a second end or a third end from the 12th century.
Well,
Which is no, the other one you said in the third or fourth slide. Yes, that one.
Okay,
So this is from the 12th century.
Here's only one.
Okay, because it looks to me without any. So maybe
We do that actually the best analog would be the Vatican of the Duke 746.
Okay.
Which is certainly from the first half of the
So first half of the 12th century.
This is what Lydia Perrier called mid-eleventh.
And regarding J1905, you think also that the scribe that has the Schola Photiana in the outer margin of the catena is from the second half of the 12th century, of the 10th century, so just a few years later. The text of the commentary.
Also, the photographs that I got are not very good, not in the manuscript in Paris. But I think it's the 10th century hand. I mean, there's no reason to think it's much later than the main fact. It could even be, at the pinch, it could even be the same scribe writing a more relaxed cursive hand. But because I'm inclined to think that it's a different person.
My idea was that it could be possible that the same scribe copied, wanted to integrate the text of the Pseudo-Communion Normal Tipus with the Schola Photiana maybe in a later period. So maybe this is the same.
Well, what is certain here is that
the same scribe in two different era.
What is certain is that there was no exemplar where these two were already combined. So we've got two distinct thoughts, from one of which came the Pseudo-Communion catena without the Photiana. And then the Photiana came from a second source, and was added at a second stage in the production of the manuscript. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Great. No. I'm afraid. Gabriel, you have a question.
Sorry, it might be a stupid question, but I was just wondering with the numbering of, so with the Greek letter numbering and then symbol numbering, can you use that for dating?
For my knowledge, no. I mean, there may be something. The thing is that oftentimes these are very just a product of the science invention. So there are no standard conventions of such as there is. So no, you can't do it. But I don't think anybody can actually look at it. Maybe there are some that are difficult, but then I wouldn't say it would.
May I ask one more? When you said at the end that not everything is a copy, and this can be seen by these manuscripts, I mean, that's an intriguing thought. Do you think there's a connection that we could say that at the moment this was added, the biblical text is also seen as something already frozen? I say yeah, too much. So as an authority that you cannot change anymore, so you can comment on it, or is this completely unrelated and just part of the development of both texts, actually, of commentary and biblical text?
If you, like, in light of how we talked this morning,
Yeah.
even the biblical text was not thought of as a fixed entity. So when you are not aware that there was barrier, which one recorded in them? Right. But in this case, it's not the biblical text that is altered, it's the commentary. And of course, the commentary is a drawing to this. So, and we can see it drawing in front of our eyes here. What I mean is that there was no single exemplar from which this book as such was copied. So there were at least two different sources, which were here combined for the first time. And then supposedly this manuscript was copied by another scribe would already be a fixed commentary.
But would be the next step then to leave out the biblical text, like on the last page where you have this continuous text?
I think this is an unusual case because, I mean, there was simply no room for the Photius. So whatever was left over had to go on the last page. At first, when I first looked at it, I thought, well, at last we have the continuous text of Photius, it's commentary. But it's not the continuous text, it's just one story after the other. Crammed into two pages.
Thank you. Any final questions in the room or online? Then thank you very much again for your data.